IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Hi, I'm Utsav, a behavior researcher by training and a slow traveler by passion. Postcards from Nowhere is a travel podcast where I condense a decade of travel experiences and explore not just the where, but also the why and how to travel. My stories emerge from slow traveling the less explored parts of the world: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Armenia, Uzbekistan, and even China. At the end of each story, I give practical tips and new ideas about how to travel better. This week, in the 6th episode of the series Fabulous Foods, we trace the journey of Clove from the islands of Indonesia to the student hostels of India and uncover the web of transnational smuggling and nostalgia that has come to define it today. Peter Piper picked some packs of pickled peppers. In each pack of pickled peppers that Peter Piper picked was 3 pickled peppers. Now, Peter Piper is happy with all 36 of his pickled peppers. How many packs of pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick? You may remember this nursery rhyme from school, but ever wondered where it comes from? Why was Peter Piper interested in pickling peppers in the first place? The answer goes back all the way to 1748. A young French adventurer, Pierre Pouvre, proposed to voyage to the Eastern world. He went on to become the governor of the French-controlled islands of Mauritius and Reunion. Pierre was a botanist and horticulturist, and his surname actually meant pepper. The reason why Pierre wanted to voyage the Eastern world, however, had nothing to do with his interest in the natural world as a botanist. He was no Alexander von Humboldt, the famed German polymath who laid the foundations for the field of biogeography. Pierre's ambitions were more entrenched in the colonial power game playing out in Southeast Asia in the 18th century. This supposed man of science wanted to be a smuggler, with the aim of ending the trade monopoly of the Dutch on the prized commodity of the Western world, nutmeg and clove. The plan was simple. Step 1 was to smuggle clove and nutmeg from the Dutch-possessed Moluccas, or Maluku Islands, of the Malay archipelago. These were the only known places in the world where nutmeg and clove grew. Step 2 was to introduce these spices in the Isle de France with the aim to turn the island into a cultivating ground for the French spice trade. So the French colonial government approved the proposal. Meanwhile, the Governor General of French India, Joseph Francois Dupleix, handed a secret letter to Pierre. He offered 20,000 piastres for 25 nutmeg and clove plants each. Dupleix presented the same letter to a Spanish merchant named Cavallo, who sailed from Pondicherry to Manila. Apparently, this certain Cavallo was prone to gossip. To Pierre's great surprise, when he disembarked in Manila in late May 1751, the contents of the letter had become publicly known, and the mission was no longer a secret. He, meanwhile, had additional problems to deal with. Clove seeds were not common amongst traders, as they only sold grown plants. Now that the lid was blown off his operation, he did not enjoy the kind of protection and patronage of the French colonial government as he had earlier. So Pierre decided to get creative. Over the next few years, he entered into informal agreements with anyone who could forward his project, which included an old and respected dervish, Hade Hashem, and a pirate from the Indonesian islands of Sulawesi, Ding Podnoy. If you go to the Ternate Islands in Maluku today, you would find a tree. Getting there is no easy feat. They are separated from Indonesia's capital by 2 time zones and some 3,500 kilometers. To reach them by sea, it would take weeks, and the flight connectivity is limited. However, if you make your way to the island, about 1,800 meters above sea level, you would find this tree. Once 40 meters tall and 4 meters round. Sadly today, all that remains is a massive stump and some bare branches. The tree is known as Afo, estimated to be 350 to 400 years old. It is the world's oldest known spice tree. Legend has it that it is this very tree Pierre found and smuggled clove to the French islands. He successfully used Afo's contraband to propagate new clove plantations in French Seychelles and Zanzibar. A pocketful of seeds had proved enough to end the Dutch clove monopoly. But long before the trade monopolies were established, clove had been widely recognized for its aromatic and medicinal properties. In China, from the period of the later Han dynasty, there is a well-known anecdote about its efficacy as a breath freshener. High-ranking officials were required to put cloves in their mouths when addressing the emperor as a mark of respect to him. Into the Song period, more medical and practical functions had been attached to cloves. The most essential medical property is listed as pungent and warm, non-toxic, to warm spleen and stomach, to cure sudden intestinal turmoil and bloat, various kinds of wind swelling, and tooth cavity. Interestingly, these are also the benefits of clove recorded in Ayurvedic texts. But beyond the medicinal and its obvious uses in food, clove finds itself in a very strange place. While the origins of this usage are markedly Indonesian, it's found itself in the story of many young Indian men and women growing up. But the cash-strapped college student wanting to experiment with smoking, this was the go-to thing. Not only did the cigarette last longer to be passed around, it gave off the aroma of clove, comforting to the Indian nose so attuned to its smell. You probably know this cigarette as Gudang Garam. Gudang Garam is actually a branded variation of the Indonesian kritek, or a clove cigarette. It's called a kritek because the name resembles the sound of burning cloves. Gudang Garam is not just a cigarette of youthful nostalgia. It's big, serious business. Its last owner, Rachman Halim, went on to become the richest man in Indonesia. Be it the French, Portuguese, Dutch, or Indonesians, clove has been at the heart of transnational capitalism for centuries. It's been recognized for its aromatic culinary and medicinal uses and continues to power the tobacco addiction of millions of Indonesians. Its timeless existence is a subtle reminder of how almost everything we encounter contains multitudes. The clove is as much a flavorer of the biryani as it is an ingredient in Gudang Garam. In our quest to understand the world and make sense of it, let us not create caricatures of people and communities, but appreciate them for the sweet and spicy cloves they are. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Utsav Memory on Twitter and YVTravel42 on Instagram.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Zakir Khan's biryani brand and the PVR Inox merger. On The Longest Constitution, Priya talks about the legal aspects of cow slaughter in India and how it affects the livelihoods of butchers and other communities. On Big Talk with Tiny Humans, Devi Shobha and Meghna share tips on how we can motivate our kids to do better without being a nag. On Hansavani, here's the story Zehen Mein Atka Hua Sa Kuch. It explores the history of the bloodbath and tragedy brought on by religious conflicts. And on Say No to Drama, Chetna decodes the concept of green flags at work and the ones you should look out for. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on, including the one you're listening to us on now. And also, please do check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels. They're all available on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to help us understand you, the listener, better, and how you like our shows, how you respond to the advertising, and so on. We'd really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It's at ivmpodcast.com/survey. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
What is the workplace and how does your gender and body affect your right at work? Hey, I'm Priya Mirza, and on the Longest Constitution podcast, we critically examine the vision of the Indian Constitution and laws. In season 1, we looked at sex, gender, sexuality in India, and the landmark judgments which transformed our rights as citizens in this country. In season 2, we discussed the laws which shape the workplace and examine how ability, competence, and merit impact us, and much more. Join me, Priya Mirza, every Wednesday only on the IVM Podcast app, website, and all the major podcast streaming platforms.